Hi, everybody. I'm John Kenlon, publisher of DSN, and we are talking PBMs today with Danny Sanchez, CEO, EmpirRx Health. Hey, Danny.
Hey, Don, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. So PBMs in the news quite a bit lately. We always hear about the big three, OptumRx, we hear about Caremark, we hear about Express Scripts. What makes EmpirRx Health different from these traditional PBMs?
Thanks for the question. I think, at the heart of what EmpirRx does is we put the patient first, and it is through our clinically driven model. Everything we do is about how can we lower our sponsors' costs, but then also how can we ensure that we're getting the right therapies to patients and treating patients, correctly. And, what's exciting about EmpirRx is I think it's a solution that everybody would want for themselves and for their families. Imagine going to a pharmacy and knowing that after your doctor prescribes you something, in the background, there's a pharmacist looking at not just what was prescribed, but everything that you are prescribed to ensure that you're getting the right medication, that your the drug interactions are looked at properly, taking care of you, the patient. And notice that when I talk about this, I'm not talking about rebates or medication spread or making more money off of volume. I think at the heart of EmpirRx is if we do right by the patient, our company is going to do well. And I think we hold that strong. One of the challenges across PBM as a whole is it is driven by volume. And, we don't play in that volume game. It is really a clinically driven patient first model.
All right. So you mentioned EmpirRx Health is a clinically driven PBM company. That is different. Why is a clinically driven model so different and presumably better than the other PBM models?
If you look at how PBMs function, right? PBMs try to steer, your big three, your big five PBMs, they try to steer patients to preferred drugs. And so what's a preferred drug? A preferred drug is a drug that's been contracted with pharma to say, hey, pharma, I'm going to steer all my patients onto your cholesterol medication, and in exchange for that, you're going to give me better rebates. So I'm going to make money, basically not putting patient on the right therapy, but on the preferred drug that I've negotiated with pharma. That's how a PBM works today in kind of the simplest form. EmpirRx doesn't do that. We're looking at what were you prescribed? Is what your physician prescribed you the right drug for you based on every other therapy you're on? And if it's not the right drug, we're going to call and have a discussion with your physician. We're not going to just try to move your medication to something that's on a preferred list. As a matter of fact, we're an open formulary PBM, which means every drug can be covered. It's just a matter of, is it the right therapy for you? So there is no steerage. There is no putting a patient on a preferred drug. We are an open formulary PBM. We like to engage with the physician to have a discussion around what the right therapy is. I think fundamentally, one of the challenges that we see today is, these specialty meds. Specialty meds are skyrocketing and they're very, very expensive. The pharma pipeline with specialty meds is growing. They're extremely expensive. Physicians today are prescribing a lot of specialty meds, but do you really need the specialty med, John? With a generic drug that costs 1/10 of what a specialty med costs suffice? That's what our pharmacists, that's what our clinical engagement is all about, making sure you're on the right therapy. And by doing that, we ensure a good outcome. If you're on a drug that's affordable and sustainable, you're likely to stay on that drug for a long time, which is great for you. That's going to drive a good outcome for you. That's going to lower medical spend, versus putting you on a specialty drug that's just not sustainable, that's very expensive, and frankly, not the right therapy for you. So that's one example of a big difference between us and kind of your big five PBMs.
Sure. And the word that I heard that I think is not used too often in this space is transparency. And that I think that says a lot about it. And EmpirRx right there. Wow. Okay. So you've been in the business a long time in the pharmacy space. Where do you see pharmacy overall going in the next few years? That we see chains that bigger operators seem to be changing their model. So what do you think it looks like, and what do you see the role being for EmpirRx as the industry evolves?
I get excited about the role of the pharmacist because it's challenging, but let's face it, you're second most trusted healthcare professional out there, second only to nurses. You're most accessible. There are more pharmacists There's a pharmacy within a couple of miles of every human in the United States. So easily accessible, highly trusted. They are severely overworked today. We know that, because we're asking them to do more because of those reasons, right? Because they're capable and they're accessible. So we've been asking them to do more. I want to continue to lean on the pharmacist. I think we need to work better to make sure that we free the pharmacist up so they can perform the tasks and the duties they're capable of doing. So allowing them to perform at the top of their license. I think EmpirRx does that by our model. I mean, if you're a pharmacist, this is where you want to be. You want to be looking at a patient's therapies, using all the knowledge you learned in school to determine what the right therapy is, looking at interactions. And I think that's exciting. And frankly, we need to leverage that because it's going to drive a better outcome for patients across the board. So I'm going to keep on working very hard to put the pharmacist at the center of care because that's where I think they belong, and continue to try to partner with larger organizations that want to be pioneers around changing the PBM model. Because I do think in order for us to change the model, and to drive a different standard forward, we're going to need luminaries to step up and say, you know what, I'm willing to change. I'm willing to adopt a different model, and I'm not going to chase rebates, and I'm not going to go and try to chase a rebate check. I'm going to move to a PBM that's going to save me money, net. It's going to save me more money. But I'm not going to be dependent on that rebate check at the end of every quarter. That's where I think things are going with just the pharmacist and where they could serve, and then PBM as a whole.
Yeah, I think you're right. If we can reward the pharmacists and the pharmacy for the work they're doing, we're going to be better able to capitalize on the quality of care, accessibility, convenience, affordability, all those things that you discussed. But there has to be fair compensation. And I think that also makes the pharmacists feel better about what they're doing. So then they perform better and everybody wins, especially the patient. Okay. So will we see a closer working relationship between pharmacy chains and PBMs like EmpirRx in the future? I mean, what's it going to take, and how long is it going to take for that to happen?
I think there is certainly a lot of eager chains out there that want to be first and challenge the model. And for the reasons you just said, I'm a chain drugstore, grocer. I want to provide the highest level of care because I want to take care of my clients. It's what I'm passionate about. But to do that, I need to get paid fairly, and I need to be able to afford more staff. And how do you take care? You see this on the news all the time, right? How do you take care of the pharmacist that's overworked, that up to just a year ago didn't even take lunch? Now they're allowed to take lunch, right? You have to pay them correctly and be fair in compensation. And I think, again, to do that, we need to break the mold and change the model. So today we are working with several large chains, thinking through, and small chains, because I think it takes everybody. And I would say even independent pharmacies, everybody needs to get on board because everybody's hurt by the existing model, But again, to do that, we have to challenge the big five, I would say, and say, you know what, I'm going to stop being a customer of yours. That's the first step. Stop being a customer of the big five. And start adopting a different type of PBM model. And then we can attack reimbursement because we'll have the power to bring enough people together to say, you know what, we have enough people in our network now where, we can look at a different network model. We can look at just different reimbursements models, or even partner with existing networks to say, hey, we got to do something different because our customers are demanding it. So I would say we're going to move fast because I think we have people that want to move very quickly to a different type of model. And I'm passionate about it. Like you said, John, I've worked in the space for a long time. I am going to push as hard as I can. My team will as well to try to evolve the existing model.
There are lots of challenges. What are some of the biggest ones, and how are we going to overcome them?
I think the most obvious challenge, I kind of stated earlier, is organizations are used to these big rebate checks. And what's interesting to me is the person within an organization that kind of makes a decision on some of this falls in the HR department, right? These are HR administrators who are trying to decide what are the best benefits for my company. They're not always in tune to the fact that the best benefits for your company, or a benefit your company is getting, is also hurting you on the backside. Like, that PBM is offering you a service on one side of the business, but they're taking money away from you on the other side of the business. And so what I've noticed so far is that there's a disconnect there. And I think that, a lot of these organizations have wonderful HR people who are trying to make the best decision possible, but they need to be informed that some of those PBMs are hurting them, on the other side of what reimbursement is. So I go back to, the challenge is we have to get off of this train where rebates are great and I want this big rebate check and I'm getting compensated by, the rebate, and just look at overall net costs, right? Like, at the end of the day, the rebate checks are high because you're driving more volume to drugs that are going to cost you more. Isn't it better to say, hey, John, you're not going to take the specialty med that's $10,000. I'm going to put you on this generic that's $5, and I'm going to save your organization, $9,995, and yes, you didn't get the rebate check, but you know what? You saved on it today. I saved you $9,000 today. You're not going to see it in your rebate check, but you're going to see it in your statement next month. So I think that's the general problem is we just got to get people used to the fact that savings is going to look a little bit different, and it's not going to be driven by a check at the end of the quarter. It's going to be driven by savings today if we move to an outcomes-based PBM model, which is exactly what EmpirRx is.
I'm taking a lot of notes, Danny. Thank you. So last question, we always like to give the audience a peek around the corner. So what does the PBM of the future look like? Can you give us a few bullets on that?
Yeah, no, I think the PBM of the future is here. Take a look at us. We're happy to walk through anybody, even our competition, through what we do today, which is not overly complicated. It is a pharmacist at the center of health. It is having the right tools and the intelligence to look at a population of patients, look at the patients that need an intervention, and then dive in and have a discussion with a physician to say, hey, I think Danny might be on the wrong therapy. Let's have a discussion about it. Here's why. And by the way, I need to make sure I state this is we don't change anybody's medication. We go and we have a discussion with the physician and suggest a better therapy based on a person who has studied pharmacology for 6+ years, right? That's what we do. And the doctor could say, no, this is the right therapy. And if a doctor says that, no problem. That's the physician. They have the pen. But 87, I think it was 77% of the time, physicians are engaging with us and they're having active conversations with us to try to put the patient on the right therapy. So your question is what's around the corner? I think we're here. And, we brought in, we spent the last year and a half adopting new technology, scaling up our platforms, building a customer service center of excellence so we can always provide white glove service to our customers and really bring in this new era of PBM. And so I'm thankful for the opportunity to tell our story. I'm hopeful that, we get more of a stage and we can just get people to listen on what a new age PBM, looks like, because this is what we are.
And I think you're right. We're already seeing a lot of activity at national level, the state level. We're seeing a lot of the retailers, some of the biggest retail pharmacy players start to kind of pull the reins in a little bit on trying to be all things to all people and get super focused on pharmacy and the things that you talked about. And the pharmacists obviously playing a central role. So Danny Sanchez, CEO, EmpirRx Health, thank you so much. Let's do it again.
Yeah, thank you, John. Appreciate you.
Be well.